Hello everybody, Jake here for FM Scout, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys why you might have been playing Football Manager wrong this whole time. Before we get into today's video, I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room. You can now actually see me on camera. I've put it in the wrong place there. There you go. You can see me on camera in the corner of your screen. First time I've done this on FM Scout. If you've been to my channel, you've probably seen me. If you've been watching any FM Scout since a little bit before Christmas, a couple months before, then you've probably been hearing my voice. Now you get to look at me now. I don't know when you guys will be watching this. Most of you probably see it in the first few days. If you're watching this a few months down the line, just want to let you know that we are currently in lockdown in England now, and that is why my hair is like this. I haven't had a haircut. But anyway, getting on with the video. If you do enjoy today's video, or if you just feel nice, then smash that like button. It really helps us out in pushing these videos out to more people. And as always, if you want to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell really helps, and you won't miss any of our uploads. And especially with the new update coming soon, Football Manager, you don't want to miss what we've got coming on the channel. And finally, as always, let me know in the comments if you do like this tip, if you have already been using this tip, if you know about it, if it's completely new information to you. And I'll ask you a question as well, just in case you guys want a little quiz to go for. I've got one player in this Mansfield team that you're about to see at some point in this video that has played for Liverpool this season in defence. So I want you guys to let me know who that is, and let's roll the intro and get straight into the video. Okay everybody, welcome. Here we are with Mansfield Town. It's 2025. This isn't a save that I do on YouTube or anything. It's just a personal save of mine where we've taken Mansfield up through the leagues. But I've noticed a problem recently with some of my players, and this is something that a lot of people have started to talk about in the FM community now. The word is starting to get out there, and once I read about it fully, I knew that I had to get it out to you guys. It was brought to light a little while ago in the SI forums, and since then it's been going around, the word's been spreading, and yeah, I'm going to talk to you about it today on why you've probably been playing Football Manager wrong this whole time. Everything from playing matches and signing players, all down to one little thing that quite a lot of us are going to overlook. And I mean, I've done it myself, and it's now something that once I know about it, I'm so aware of it that I'm looking at it in every player that I sign, every match I play. I'm thinking, you know what, that's probably because of that. So without further ado, we should probably get into the tip, shouldn't we? So let's go for it. With this Mansfield team, I'm going to use them as an example to try and help explain what's going on. So you know, you've got them kind of players where one game they'll get a 7.5 match rating, next game they'll get a 6.6, next game a 6.5, then they get 3 goals and they get an 8. And you kind of just say like, I want to replicate that form consistently. How do we do it? What's going on? Because in them games where they've got like a 6.5 and 6.6 rating, quite often they've got the attributes to do a lot better than that, and they just don't. Now there are a few factors that can affect this, like fitness and morale and all that good stuff. Like dynamics is such a huge thing in Football Manager now. But there is something that's a bit more underlying that so many of us are underlooking. It's a hidden attribute that's causing so much chaos without us guys realising, and that is consistency, guys. So consistency, I know some of you are probably thinking, I've seen consistency before, I've seen it on the pros and cons list, or if you have the editor, which I've said this before in videos, I don't use this on any of my personal saves. It's just here because I own the editor, but I refuse to use it on any save where I'm actually playing for enjoyment. I usually use it in videos to show the science behind everything. I'm not going to use it here because I like this save, but there is a hidden attribute called consistency, and that affects how well a player performs in matches, as you can imagine, how regularly they perform to the best of their ability. But when a player is extremely consistent, they're not performing at a higher level than usual. It's not that. It's actually that compared to most other people in your team, they're actually performing to their attribute ability. By the way, if you do see me like move the camera around a bit and stuff like that, I am still getting used to it for an FM Scout video when it's not just me doing gameplay on my own channel, which, by the way, you can check out in the description. A lot of you guys who came over recently, we're currently pushing for 1,250 subscribers, which is my next little milestone that I'm trying to hit. So if you want to check out the new little save that we started there only a few days ago, then feel free. But yeah, if you see me fiddling around with it, that's why. Now, we're going to get into consistency, how it is actually affecting your players and how you guys can improve it. And I've got a few examples in this team to help me like explain it well enough, because I think I've had a lot of times in this save where I've looked at someone and I thought, I bet you aren't consistent, and then I realise that they're not. So, like I say, obviously if you want to go and use your editor and check out hidden attributes, no one's going to stop you, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're just trying to have fun in Football Manager. The best way to see if someone is consistent or not, one way is to look in game, of course, and just notice it, but another thing is to go to your coach report. So we've got this guy here, Christopher Mullen. Now, looking at his attributes, this 19-year-old wonder kid, left-footed, central midfielder, looks like he's got everything to be a superb deep-line playmaker, 18 passing, great work rate, great vision, great teamwork. You know, I'm not going to go through all his attributes, but he looks perfectly fine. No reason why he shouldn't be performing well in the Premier League. Yet he is one of my worst performing players in a team that is definitely like a League 1, League 2, Championship mixed side. He is one that should stand out, but he actually falls below the pack, and that's because he's not consistent. Now, the place you can usually see this is in your coach report for your players. We can see here, needs to work on becoming more consistent if he is to develop further. This is the game's way of telling you this guy's consistency is less than 10, I believe. I think I'm getting that right. So how it works is, it's on a scale of 1 to 20, 20 being the most consistent. If he's got like 20, 19, 15 consistency, that's going to appear as a pro. If he's got like 11, 10, 9 consistency, that's something that basically it won't be in your report and it shouldn't really cause too many issues. He's not super consistent, but he's not inconsistent enough that it's a problem. But if you see it on the cons list, that means it's usually less than 10, less than 9, that kind of thing. The more orange it is, the closer it is to 10. If it's red, it's probably like 3, 4, 5 consistency, which isn't great, of course. We can see here that we can probably imagine Christopher Mullins on like 7 or 8 consistency. He needs to work on becoming more consistent if he is to develop further. And now I noticed this in game because some games, like average rating wise, it's okay, it's not as good as he should be for a player of his calibre. And the reason his average rating is like that isn't because he's consistently getting 6.7s, it's because he gets a 7 one game, next game he gets a 6.4 and a 6.3, then the next game he gets a 7 again because he gets an assist from a corner or something. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, Christopher Mullin, you are a perfect player, why aren't you performing? And it's pretty much down to his consistency. So in a second I'm going to show you how to remedy this, or at least a way in which you can try it. Like, mentoring, as much as you think it might work, doesn't seem to do anything for consistency, neither does training, nothing like that. I'm going to show you an example of the opposite type of player now, and then we'll talk about how he can remedy it. So let's go over to somebody who I find is performing way above his ability level when he's not really that good, and that is Reece Williams. Reece Williams here is a decent player who's been with us since we were in League 2 on loan, then we eventually signed him in the Championship, and here he is in the Premier League. Realistically, he is not a Premier League player, guys. He's got 2.5 star ability, potential to be 3 star now. As much as I've talked about in the past before, like, yeah, you should judge a player based on their attributes and not their star rating. I feel like I've got that wrong now, because not even attributes seem to really judge a player well enough if you don't think about his consistency. But for the sake of this video, he's a 2.5 star player with pretty poor attributes, I would say, for a Premier League centre-back. Yeah, Championship, League 1, he's probably fine, but he's quick, he's okay mentally, and then actually as a defender, 11 marking, 11 tackling, 10 technique, 10 anticipation. It's not really that great. 12 positioning, probably not good enough to be at a Premier League level. Yet I have defenders who should be considered Premier League defenders who aren't performing anywhere near Reece Williams' level. This guy is getting a 7.27 average match rating last season. That's not just because he's played like 10 games or something. He's been consistent at the back for us so far as we get towards the end of our second season in the Premier League. He got a 7.24 last season, scoring goals and, yeah, just doing a great job for us. But clearly his attributes aren't good enough for him to be performing at a super high level, is he? But we can see he is a very consistent performer, suggesting that consistency is probably on the high side for this guy if we looked at his hidden attributes, which we won't, but I imagine it's on like 16, 17, 18, something like that, meaning he is more consistent. Now this is where things are going to really shock you, because a lot of the time when a player is performing really well, like Reece Williams is, he's performing above his ability, you're probably thinking, oh, that's because he's more consistent, so he's performing better than his attributes. No, what it actually means is him being consistent means that he's actually performing to his attribute level. So he is actually performing like this, suggesting that everybody else is performing way below their attribute level. So for the example of Christopher Mullin, as good as this guy is attribute-wise, because his consistency is so low, his current ability in-game is actually affected. So when he walks into a match, his current ability, based on his consistency, so maybe at the sides this game he's going to be inconsistent. That's obviously how consistency works. The less consistent they are, the more poor games they're going to have. So when he walks into a game and the match engine decides he's going to have a poor game, he will actually perform way below his current ability. That means all of his attributes are going to be downgraded in-game, and he's not actually going to be performing at this level until he eventually does get that one game where he does play well for that one game and he does well, because consistency doesn't mean he's never going to be good. It just means he isn't good all the time. And it's something that none of us guys are thinking about. We're always thinking that, okay, he's got this attributes, obviously it is affected a bit by morale and fitness, but when he walks into the game, that's how he performs. It's not. If a player is inconsistent, he's probably performing at like 70, 80% of his attributes, not really performing at a full level. So I can imagine, I don't know the exact science specific details, but if we walk Christopher Mullin into a match, this passing is suddenly 14, his teamwork is suddenly 14, you know, it kind of goes down and his current ability is degraded in a match, whereas Reece Williams isn't performing suddenly above his level, he's actually performing at his level, and is probably one of the few players on the pitch that is. So I hope I have done a good job of explaining what's going on there. So it's basically the more consistent a player is, the more likely they are to actually perform at their attribute level. And if you happen to find a player that is going in your team and he just isn't performing as well as he should do, there's a good chance if you check his report, he's not a consistent player, and that means most of the time he walks onto the pitch, he isn't going to play well because he's not consistent, he's not performing to the level of his current ability. So what does that mean for you guys? What does it mean you can do to fix it? What does it mean you should be looking at when signing a player, and why are you playing the games wrong? Well, when you are loading up a game now and you are searching for a new player, I'm going to be very aware in his coach report. I'm not just going to look at his attributes, I'm going to check his consistency, because, yeah, you might find a player like Christopher Mullen, he might be 25 years old and he has attributes like this, and you think he's going to be superb for my team. But then if he has really poor consistency, let's say this is red, and then I found a player who had green consistency, was probably a little less of a player, has like 3 attributes less in each area, I'd go for the player that is more consistent, because he's actually going to perform at his attribute level, unlike someone like Christopher Mullen, where he's just not performing up to the level that he should do enough to actually be a consistently good player in the league like the Premier League. So I really suggest to you guys, check it out if you found players in your save that just aren't performing, and when you are looking for a player, do check his consistency. If it's not mentioned, you're probably fine. If it's green, great. If it's orange like Christopher Mullen, don't let it completely put you off a player, but take it into account. If it is red, then you should really think about, is this player worth signing? So obviously it is something you have to take into account when signing a player, but how can I fix it in the case of Christopher Mullen here? If he had low determination, I could mentor him. If he had low passing, I could train him. But how can you fix consistency? Well, one way that people have talked about, and I think this works, I've noticed an improvement in it. It's something that I think people need to be more aware of, and something that people don't do enough, and that is disciplining a player. So if a player has a poor performance in a game, I usually set my boundary at 6.5 or less. If he gets a 6.6, I kind of class that as average. If they get less than a 6.6, let's say 6.3 Christopher Mullen has got in a recent game, then you go over here and there will be, after a match, something that says disciplined player. The reason you can't see it here is because I've already disciplined him. I have actually found as well that the option does disappear like if you wait too long after a match, so be sure to do it. But if he has a poor performance, you go on here and there'll be something that says discipline a player. Start off with discipline them with a warning, and then you can go down the list. It's a bit like when a player gets too many bookings and you get to discipline them that way. It's a way to do that, but performance wise. So if he isn't doing well the next time after you give him a warning, if he gets a 6.2 again a couple of weeks later, I go up to him and I say, here's a 1-day fine of your wages. And usually the players accept it, they understand, unless they're like too big for their boots. Someone like Christopher Mullen has accepted it every time, and he's actually on the 4th one down the list now, so he's still not performing consistently, but I have started to notice that his consistency does seem to be improving. But yes, basically, if you do discipline the player, the chances are if you keep doing it at the right times, that they will get it into their mind. You will actually get a little message in your inbox that says something like, Christopher Mullen is going to try hard to be more consistent in future games, and that kind of thing will slowly but surely start to raise his consistency rating until eventually, I don't need him to go fully green like you've got Reece Williams with like 17 consistency. I just want it to be not a problem anymore. Yeah, if he performs like every 3 or 4 games, if he just has an off game, I'm not that fussed, but it's when it's like every other game there's a real problem in a player's consistency, it needs fixing, and someone like Christopher Mullen is really affected by this. I want to see this player with this attributes helping my Mansfield team, because he could really be like a top level midfielder for us, but he's just not, and he needs to develop and be more consistent. So disciplining your player is a way to sort that out, is a way to slowly begin to fix it. It's not an instant fix, but it will slowly fix it over time. I've got this guy here, Jordan Turanariga. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he's a centre-back. And if you look at him, he isn't really mentioned as being consistent or inconsistent, which would suggest that his consistency is probably at a level of about 9, 10, 11, where it's not really a problem, but it's not really a strength either. But talking about a player whose consistency is really benefiting them, much like Reece Williams, you've got Reece Devine here, who surprisingly, he came and joined us on loan in League One. He has now won Player of the Year in the Premier League last year from left back with a 7.5 average match rating, and this season he's topping it and looks like he's going to get another Player of the Year with a 7.53. Is this because he's absolutely superb in his attributes? Probably, like he has got decent attributes, but at the same time you've seen so many more left backs, so many better left backs who just don't get that kind of average match rating, and yes, he does get a few assists, but not enough to completely warp this like that. He will go into most matches, and even if he doesn't do anything, he walks out with a 7.2 because he's so consistent. And where does that come from? Well, if we have a look in his report, we'll probably see, there you go, he's a fairly consistent performer, suggesting his consistency level is probably about 12 or 13, and yeah, it becomes a positive for him. Most games he's going to turn up and actually play to this attribute level, where most players are just not. They're not performing anywhere near their current ability. I'll try and find one more example before we go. Let me have a look around. And here's another one, and I didn't just sign this guy because he's got the same name as me. Jake Cooper from Millwall came up for a decent price. We bought him. Much like Reece Williams, yes, he's a very good centre-back, probably actually a Premier League level centre-back, maybe like lower level, but Jake Cooper is actually getting better match ratings than a lot of our more technical skilled players because they're not actually performing at their level, whereas Jake Cooper, because he is classed as a, let's have a look here, consistent performer, again it's green, so that's really good. that's suggesting that most of the time he is actually performing to these attributes. And when I've got a centre-back partnership that is doing that well for us, we've managed to finish mid-table, he's getting a 7.26. I mean, that's consistency for you there. Both seasons in a row, he's got exactly the same average match rating because he's just performing at the same level every time. Whereas some players, much like Mullen, just aren't performing at that level and therefore aren't as effective in game. And that's the reason why he's not in a team that the other two centre-backs are always consistently playing for me, just because they're so consistent and I must have them in my team because they're always going to perform at the same level. Now, that doesn't mean sell any player that has low consistency. You can work on it. You can also probably afford to have a few inconsistent players in your side if your side's good enough. You also might choose to completely ignore this advice and just play him anyway, and I'm sure he'll eventually get a few 7 match ratings for you. But if you're realistic about it, you will start noticing that he is not performing to the level that he really could be if he was consistent. So take consistency into mind, guys, when you're trying to sign players. If a player has a bad game, even if they're not necessarily classed as an inconsistent player, still discipline them for it because it will improve the player's consistency and therefore make them play better for you in the future. Don't overdo it though. If a player has a bad game, don't instantly fine him 2 weeks' wages. It's going to go wrong. You need to work it up and actually be sensible with the way you do it. At the end of the day, a bad performance probably isn't actually worth someone not being paid for 2 weeks. Can you imagine having a bad day at work and then not being paid for 2 weeks? Yeah, it's not really fair on them. But if you figure it out and do it the right way, you can really get some good results out of it. And I promise you, if you have a team full of decently consistent players and some that are really consistent, you're going to perform way better than you think you will, just because they're actually performing at the level that the game is showing you and not downgrading them every time you go into the match engine. So that will be the end of today's video, guys. If you have enjoyed it, smash that like button. Comment down below if you know about this tip, if this tip is completely new to you. I think a lot of people are aware of consistency, just not how important it was. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out any of FM Scout's uploads. And if you want to check my channel out too, that would also mean a lot. The Lil series is just about to get underway. We've had the first introductory episode, so if you want to go check that out, then feel free. I think that's everything. I hope you have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.